Hello everyone. This presentation is about employee stock ownership plan. Um, in this, we'll briefly go through the introduction, then the regulations pertaining to it from SEBI, then the legislative intent, the issues around this stock option scheme, and then conclusion. Now, before beginning, I think everyone will be curious to understand what this employee stock option scheme means here. Now, uh, these are schemes which a company issues to its employees. Think of it as a sort of a remuneration. For example, you must have heard a lot about, um, let's say, packages, 50 lakh package from IIT Delhi to some student or something like that. Now, the entire amount need not be in terms of cash. It may be that 50% of the salary or remuneration is in cash and the rest is in stocks. Now, the interesting point here is that the stocks, for example, in this case, 25 lakh amount of stocks of that particular company is on a certain price which is there, and then the employee has an option of selling that stock later on. I mean, dealing in that stock later on in the stock exchange. So, you can say that the stock option plans are a sort of remuneration given by the company to their employees. Now, in this paper, we'll look into the brief. We'll not go into details of the regulations. We'll only be looking at certain important terms which are there in the regulation. But our focus will be around the legislative intent, why that was necessary, and what are the issues around stock option scheme. Okay. Now, uh, this stock ownership plan, is a sort of a corporate finance under the head of equity finance. Now, equity finance, as we all know, is a process of raising capital through the sale of shares. Now, every company, in order to run itself, needs a capital. Now, that capital can be in terms of liquid cash, can be in terms of shares. Now, it is a corporate finance, and under which, when employees hold stocks, for example, here 25 lakhs, the moment the employee is enrolled, then the capital of 25 lakhs in terms of shares is now vested into the employee. So that's how the uh, capital has increased. The yeah, the capital of the company has come. The employee has been vested into the with that amount. Now, this is for the benefit of the employees, and it increases productivity of the employees, because not only at the time of joining, even let's say at the promotion or annual cycles, then the company issues these stock schemes, option schemes to the employees, and this is sort of a motivation, like appraisal. This is also sort of motivation for the employees to work much harder for the company, and therefore it increases the productivity. Now, here basically I've highlighted the important sections of the paper, and that's how I'm going through it. Now, yeah, okay. So, equity finance. If you look at, I mean, the syllabus is divided into four sections. The corporate finance, which is equity finance, debt finance, other sources, and PFIs. Now, our focus will be only in the stock ownership plan, which comes under the head of equity finance. Now, in this paper, from an exam point of view, I've included all the, briefly a paragraph or more about all the kind of equity finance, that is share capital, equity and preferential, sweat equity shares, and stock ownership plan, so that later on it becomes useful to us. But our focus will be on the employee ownership plan. Okay. Now, yeah, I think, yeah, other speakers have mentioned about all these aspects, so I'm not going into details here. Uh, Preference rights and all these things. But one thing that needs to be explained here is what is the difference between sweat equity shares and employee stock ownership plan. Now, sweat equity shares are given to the company's employees on favorable terms in recognition of their work, and it allows the company to retain the employees by rewarding them for their services. So, like the word itself suggests, sweat. So, it is as a as a reward for the employee's hard work. Now this is different from the stock ownership plan because uh, it need not be to retain an employee. It is basically to hire an employee and then as a regular remuneration that is given as an appraisal or raise. So yeah, in philosophical terms, it is different from the optional stock ownership plan. Now, the employee stock ownership plan is for attracting and retaining talented employees, and the SEBI had launched this regulations, which is as notified. There's the SEBI Share-Based Employee Benefits Regulation 2014. Now, these inside this regulation, there are different schemes, different benefit schemes that are there, like employee stock ownership scheme, options, general employee benefit schemes, retirement benefit schemes, and SAR schemes. Now, there are so all these six are dealt with in different sections and the details related to it. Now, these stock options can be issued by only a listed entity regulated by the SEBI. Now, the legislative enabled, I mean, the section which enables the main act is the Companies Act, Section 62(1)(b), which says that a company can offer shares through employee stock option to their employees through special resolution subject to the conditions specified in Rule 12 of the Companies Rules 2014. Now, the company can implement these schemes either directly or by setting up a revocable trust. And there's a compensation committee inside the company which determines who are the members who can be eligible to the employees who can participate in such schemes. And in case of winding up of the company, the excess monies are utilized for the repayment of the loan. Now, this highlighted section shows that whenever a company comes out with a stock option plan, then it needs to give a declaration in the SEBI website regarding that. For example, here in the company Gammon India Limited has informed the Bombay Stock Exchange that the compensation committee of the company in its meeting held on a certain date approved the issue and grant of up to 20 lakh stock options to eligible employees of the companies under the Gammon India Limited stock option scheme 2007 pursuant to the approval of the shareholders of the company. Now, this paragraph itself shows us so many essentials that are required for the entire process. For example, the schemes, it must be in according to the schemes, there must be eligible employees, there must be a compensation committee, and then the approval of the shareholders must be there. There must be a meeting, and then issue and grant of certain number of stock options must be fixed, and things like that. Now, further, the company has informed that the grant is made in accordance with the scheme and the guidelines. So, this declaration needs to be given to the SEBI and displayed in the website. Now, if we look at the brief overview of this regulation, the preamble itself says that this regulation is for the benefit of the employees with a view to facilitate smooth operation of such schemes while preventing any possible manipulation. Now, preventing possible manipulation is because sometimes you may think of a scenario. We'll come later into this section in the paper and how things can be manipulated. I mean, leave it for the later part. So yeah, these are the different benefit schemes that I had mentioned earlier. Then yeah, the definition of the employee is not that important. Okay. Okay. So there's a difference between option scheme and purchase scheme, which we can spend 2 minutes here. The employee stock option scheme means a scheme under which a company grants employee stock option either directly or through a trust. But in a purchase scheme, the company offers shares to the employees where the trust may undertake secondary acquisition for the purpose of the scheme. So purchase is a later on. I mean, option is directly or through a trust, but in a purchase there is secondary acquisition that is involved. And option means that there is an option given to the by the company to the employee that gives him a right to purchase or subscribe at a future date at predetermined price. So company can say that you may utilize this right now or later, at a predetermined price, the stock which is which has been assigned to the employee, and scheme is directly administered through the trust by the company or the trust. Vesting, yeah. So vesting, as Rule 21ZI states, that is a process by which the employee becomes entitled to receive the benefit of a grant made by him under any of the scheme, and the vesting period is during which the vesting of the option takes place. So, for example, the vesting period can be 1 year. Mostly, it is 1 year in the case of this regulation. So, let's say a stock is given. Then, so vesting means that the stock is for example, 25 lakhs amounts of share is given to a certain employee, but it is divided into three vesting periods. For example, 1/3 of the share will be vested in him for 1 year, then the rest 1/3 for 2 years, and the rest 1/3 for 3 years, which means that uh, vested means that he has that right in him, but it hasn't yet accrued at this point in time for him. So he'll have to wait for 1 year, and then from that time onwards, he can exercise his rights on that share, whether to sell or to keep and things like that. But the price is fixed. The price is predetermined, and the shares have to be given to him. The number of shares that have been committed to the employee. Now we look into the legislative intent. Now, if you look at the where this all began, this didn't begin in India. It began in American economy, where the American economy is known for its capitalist structure, where I think around 10% of the population owns around 70% of the entire wealth. So there's a huge disparity in incomes and then the wealth in the American culture, and that's basically how it goes with the capitalist economy. Now, there was a idea to redistribute this income. So the redistribution of the income can be in two different ways. One can be forceful, wherein the legislature can enact tax laws and then tax the higher income group to pay the higher taxes and then redistribute the income. One can be a market-driven approach, wherein there's a certain amount of stake of every employee also in the capital of the company. So this is how the stock option plan came into picture, wherein the corp yeah, so in the stock option plan, it is to transfer controlling equity blocks in American corporations from outside shareholders to the workers. So even workers or employees can now own stocks, which means that they have a capital share of the capital, and then if a company grows well, then the workers or the employees also get benefited from the work, and then therefore their capital or their income is also increasing proportionately with the success of the company. Because if the employee doesn't have shares, then he'll only have a fixed remuneration, and that would mean that no matter how much he works hard, he'll always get a fixed pay. But if he owns stocks, then if the company does well, then his share, the share of the price of the company increases, his capital wealth also increases. So this was the legislative intent, which was to address the perceived inequities in the distribution of capital in the American economy, and piloted by Senator Russell Long. And the other motivation was that, according to the Congress, the introduction of new technology magnifies the costs of the society. Workers steadily lost jobs to the machines, and then American workers were at a greater disadvantage if such stock option schemes were not implemented. And there are many benefits that are there from this option stock ownership plan, which is new wealth and productivity for the company, for the economy, and then a chance for the workers to accumulate a capital estate. Then there are more jobs, reduced fiscal strain, a principled foreign policy, union management cooperation, preservation of the marginal enterprise, and expanded consumer purchasing power to irrigate the economy. Now, the principal means by which this ESOP program was claimed to achieve these objectives was that basically the firm will identify an investment opportunity. For example, here let's say Reliance or some company wants to enter into a particular sector, so it is seeking identifying an investment opportunity. Let's say it wants to enter into furniture sector or something like that. Then the corporate, that company starts borrowing through the ESOP finances, I mean the ESOP facility. So it will issue stocks, and then it requires the generated cash, and then once the company does well, it will repay. I mean that the plant generates the cash required to repay the ESOP loan and continues to generate on purchasing power for the owners, who are now working Americans instead of already wealthy capitalist elite. And such increased ownership of the employees in the company improves the productivity and the financial performance for worker owned versus non worker owned firms. Okay, now what are the issues around these schemes? Now, in order to understand this, we need to focus on two different things. That is, in a company can be of two types. One is where there are very less number of employees, not which is called not which in this paper is not so numerous, or there can be many employees, which is a numerous employee size. And even the stock plan can be very high in amount, or it can be low in amount. So basically two variables gives us four possible combinations, which I have highlighted here. That there's a paper in this which has been referred to in this term paper, which has done this investigation, that small ESOP size adopted by numerous employee firms, and similarly there are four different subsets. And so the question, actually the issue was whether the productivity gets increased or not when such schemes are applied. Now to answer that depended on the employee size and the ESOP size, which is here. Now we'll see later, I mean in the investigation results. Yeah. So first of all, small ESOP size adopted by not so numerous employee firms, which is here the third case. Now it says that the first of all not so there are many very less employees. Let's say there are just 10 employees in the firm, and the ESOP size is also very small. Okay. Now the result said that this is less likely to suffer from the free rider problems, and are also followed by significant increase in the productivity. Now what is free rider problem is that let's say one employee is there who is being given a certain let's say 10 shares, 10 employee stock options. Then there's another employee who has to be given that because the first employee has been given. I mean basically this problem comes into picture when there's a huge size of employees. Let's say there are 1,000 employees. In order to control the attrition of the employees, you have to satisfy all the members. So basically you'll have to, let's say, press some levels, like let's say ki entry pay you're giving 100 shares, then after 1 year you're giving 100 shares, so that every employee is getting motivated. So now here, even if a person works hard or not, he'll get certain shares. He's guaranteed to get certain shares. So that is free rider problems. Now such free rider problems happens in numerous employee firms, but in not so numerous, which is less employee firms, such free rider problems are not likely to happen. And then let's say even if a person is out of that 10%, let's say 1 is the manager and 9 are the employees, and then employee A is being given higher number of shares in return to his work, or let's say he's just given at the beginning to be as a higher reward, the more number of shares, then because even the manager can now identify who has worked hard, so he can make the right decision and then give the shares to the and decide how many number of shares to be given to which employee. So that's how, and he will also be motivated, and the productivity increases. The person who gets less number of shares will also be motivated to work harder for the next year, and earn more respect and therefore more stock options in the next financial year. As in comparison to the numerous employee firms where uh, people are in any way getting the shares, so there's no particular incentive in working really hard. And in the next case where there are not so numerous employee firms adopting large ESOPs, which means that the employees are very less, but the stock option size is extremely large. Now, when does this happen? Where uh, benefits are, and here the benefits to the employees are largely limited to the value of the ESOP shares gained. Now, when does this happen is basically when the company has less liquid cash. So when a company has a less liquid cash, its general tendency is to increase the number of shares and then remunerate the employee in terms of shares. Let's say in the same company that we took an example, let's say 50 lakhs package, 5 lakhs was in cash remuneration, 45 lakhs was stocks. Now that is really a sorry situation, because the employee doesn't have it vested for 1 year. 1 year, one third of 45 lakhs is not will only be he'll only be able to exercise that right after 1 year, and then second and third year. So the real liquid cash doesn't come to his hand. Now, with a large ESOP size and less employees number, this is generally seen in companies which are cash constrained. Now, but yeah, the benefits to the employees are largely limited to the value of ESOPs here. If the share value is high, then they'll be benefited. If not, then they will not be benefited. The free ride problem we have already discussed. So yeah, basically in this paper we have discussed about the stock option schemes and the legislative intent that it redirects the flow of the capital from current owners to the large and has large scale benefits such as prevention of concentration of wealth, which is also a directive principle even under the Indian Constitution under Article 39C. And then we have also in this paper seen issues around the efficiency, productivity and free rider problems. Yeah, so thank you. If there are any questions, you can please post me either here or in any the web forum, classroom, or anywhere you find it comfortable. And if you want me to give a presentation again, then I'll be glad to give it again. Okay, thank you.